it's Watford up first, as always, on a Sunday evening, 7 till 8. A bit weird, really, because there's been no football. It's been one of those international breaks which we all hate. Well, let's be honest, we do. We do all hate the international breaks. We can't wait for the Premier League football to start up once again. Andy Lewis, my regular sidekick from the Hornets' Nest, has decided he's got better things to do this weekend.
He's ditched us.
Where is he, boys?
He's at the Comedy Club.
He's at the Comedy Club. So those voices you hear are the guys from the WD18 Watford fan channel. Regularly join us on the show anyway. Robin and Jacob with me. So yeah, Andy, mate.
Thought
it was better than that.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
Every Sunday when he pops in, he gets in nice and early. He's a very committed chap. That's what I love about Andy. And I just always double check. Did you go to the game? Because sometimes we can't go to every game, can we? No,
know the feeling.
But you've watched a match today, so it's fine. You can still talk about it. Andy's like, look, mate.
It's a stupid question.
You don't need to ask. I've not missed a game in however long. But apparently he's happy to miss a Love Sport radio show.
We'll have to do a whole radio show of the one time he does miss a Watford game. And we'll just be lamenting him for the whole hour about how he's missed it and he's disgraced Watford Football Club.
He's up, Andy.
We love it.
Learn the hard way. Learn the hard way. So, boys, look, we're going to have to start with the last game that you played. Yeah, I know. Wasn't great, was it? Where do we start with that? Because it was, to say the least, a shock defeat, wasn't it? 4-0 to Bournemouth. How much credit do we give to them, and how much do we criticise your boys?
I think I said it on last week's show. It was a horror show from start to finish, and I didn't think Bournemouth really had to get out first gear. It was one of those games normally when it's a 4-0 battering. The opponent's been very good, but we were just awful. It was one of the worst performances I've seen from Watford in a long, long time. Probably since last season. Probably since Huddersfield at home where we lost 4-1. Sorry. So
at least we scored in that.
Yeah, exactly. We just didn't offer anything going forward. Defensively, we were awful. Kabasele picking up a red card. Cathcart out of position again. Discipline. Holebas is now out for Wolves. It was absolutely shambolic. Nothing up front. It was just a cycle. Foster would hoof it up. Yeah. Couldn't hold the ball up. And then Bournemouth would either create a really good chance or score. It was absolutely diabolical.
It was really interesting to watch as well, especially in those first 5 to 10 minutes. I thought going into that game, we can get something from here. First 5 minutes, we had a good few chances, slippery conditions. I remember the Bournemouth winger who scored their first goal actually miscontrolled it out of play twice in the first 5 minutes, and I thought they don't look set here at all. And then suddenly 10 minutes it's just changed and they hit us on the counter attack, and our defence, it does worry me.
It was more worrying the fact that we started so well and then put in that kind of performance, because I could take defeats and you could take when you played poorly, but that was just awful. We didn't show anything where I thought, going into Wolves we can really improve on that. It was such a low bar that going into Wolves next week the confidence has just dropped massively, considering the start we've made to the season. Yeah, and that's the worrying thing.
And then that's it really. When you look at the results from this season thus far, it goes without saying it was an incredible start, wasn't it? It was better than anyone could have possibly wished and anticipated. But since then it's kind of been a mixed bag. Some results on the face of it look worse than perhaps the performance were. So the Manchester United game was the first one that you lost, and that was a decent performance. I think you were unlucky not to have got a point from that. A 1-1 draw away at Fulham, it's not a bad result. And then the cup game with Spurs, it was a decent game.
I would take a 2-2 against Spurs in the league. So in the cup you can't. And
then Arsenal, you lost to them, but again, you were so unlucky, I thought, not to have at least got a draw. I mean, Arsenal were good, and I think they've won 9 on the spin now. So, again, you have to perhaps give some credit there to Arsenal. But then, obviously, this game happens. So, where do you find yourself? Because that's quite a few defeats now, or a number of games without a win, and there's only so many times you say, oh, that was unlucky, or no, that was a decent performance. But then, the wins need to happen, don't they? And there's now talk of contracts for Javi Gracia. I want to get onto that later on in the show, but how concerned are you, or how much of the good that you did at the start of the season has perhaps disappeared? Or
I think the one you touched on, the Fulham game, I know we did get a point, but that was a really frustrating game.
That was a winning game, 100%.
The amount of chances we created, the game should have been about 3-0 up at half time. The Arsenal game, we had chances. The success one at the end,
you had loads of chances,
glaring opportunity. So
they could have nicked it at the end as well. Foster made an amazing save, and if we'd gone 2-1 out of that, it would have have been a very different outlook on that game.
100%. I think the Arsenal one's disappointing, but would you have expected us to get anything out of the game?
No.
Probably not. But the Fulham one, I did get a little bit annoyed about that because we did batter them in the first half. It was an absolute, like, we really did play well. But then, as you said, Bournemouth, it's just a complete contrast in what we've seen at the start of the season. So, yeah, going forward into our next few games, which I'm sure we'll touch upon, it's really big in Watford season, especially after our last result, because the confidence is going to be low after last week.
Especially when it comes to the start of the season, especially with like the draws and like the Arsenal away. We played well for the majority of those games, and fans came out that saying, okay, we didn't get the 3 points, but it's a very good performance, optimistic for the next game.
We can only say that so many times before we say, well, actually, look, we're missing chances. You know, it's fine doing some nice, attractive, good football, but if it's not actually then equating to points at the end of each game, then clearly the issue that we perhaps thought was smaller then becomes a bigger one.
It's weird because we've seemed to change our style of football since that Fulham game. It's become
In what way?
It's become a lot more. Yes, Foster has come in, and we've realised he's got such better distribution than Gomez. No disrespect to Gomez, amazing.
I might never disrespect.
Yeah, love you too. But Foster's come in with great distribution. It seems like now all we do is give it to him and let him just try and kick it up the pitch to Deeney, and that seems to be our only tactic now, whereas before we were playing really nice midfield football as well. In terms of that, I think Capoue and Decore were really firing at the start of the season, and I don't know what's changed.
Do you think it's the fact that you've lost a couple of games and that confidence in terms of playing out from the back? Perhaps, I mean, when you don't win games, the first message that a manager says is go back to basics, isn't it? So if the results aren't going the way you want, we'll just say, well, look, get rid. Don't give it to your centre half there. Just get rid. And sometimes you actually need to be brave to carry on doing those things, don't you?
No, 100%. And I also think that, particularly the Bournemouth game, I would have liked to seen Javi change up the system. 4-4-2 just didn't work. It really didn't work. We're getting overrun in the midfield. Maybe you could have reverted to a 4-3-3, put an extra man in the middle, because we were just getting overrun. I think it was David Brooks.
He had a great game.
Really good game. Yeah. Obviously, he has to play well, but the pockets he had in front of the back four were very big. So he was instrumental in their performance. But I thought, I would have liked to seen Javi change it up a little bit. We've got Chalobah back, we've got Deulofeu back, and I feel like going into Wolves next week, something has to give. The suspensions is a chance to change it up, and it's a chance to give other players a game.
Especially in terms of defensively, you look at Cabaselli now out. Yes, he's probably our best centre back, but he hasn't been playing well in terms of his decision making. Yeah, like there was talk of start season, people building him into a leader, a future captain of this club, perhaps. But when you're putting him rash challenges like that in the box on Josh King, I think it was, and getting sent off,
that was such a stupid.
Why are you making that tackle? But
I don't know.
But yeah, he did. He got sent off against Tottenham, but that got rescinded, obviously. But yeah, now I think he'll probably just bring in Mariappa. But Ben Wilmot's there on the bench as well, young lad from Stevenage. But he seems to be moulding him into a defensive midfielder, which I kind of like from Gracia. But yeah, I think Mariappa, he was probably our best player against Bournemouth when he came on, because we didn't concede after he came on.
I was saying to the fans afterwards, when the goalkeeper concedes 4 and none of them are his fault, then start panicking, because that is really poor.
Boys, you've posted out on your socials for some questions from the fans to ask, and you've already had some in. Do you want to start with them? What are people saying? What are people asking?
Well, the first one, this is a real big talking point actually in the Watford fan base at the minute. Who do you start up front against Wolves next week? Because obviously Troy Deeney and Andre Gray have been playing.
Yeah, and it started great.
Started really well.
A partnership there, but what is it, tailing off?
Yeah, it feels like that. I thought Gray and Deeney were both as bad as each other against Bournemouth. I don't want to overreact, but the fact we offered nothing going forward is a little bit worrying. But Jack Hingston put in the question: success or Gray for Wolves next week? Robin, take this one.
Off Deeney?
Or either Andre Gray or Troy D, but I think we'd probably keep Deeney.
No, I think Deeney's always going to start at this stage in the season at least, because club captain, and also unless he's playing terribly, manager's probably not going to bother taking him off. Success over Gray is a very real change I could see him making, especially when success kind of does remind me of Igalo in terms of the physical strength he brings compared to Gray. Gray's more getting behind, but his hold-up play has struggled. I think success has looked really good in the Carabao Cup as well, especially against Spurs when he scored. So yeah, I wouldn't mind him giving success a run out.
Is success better off at the moment being more of an impact sub? Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes, when a player comes on and he does well, like he did against Arsenal, like he did against Spurs, and there's calls for him then to start a game, and then those calls become a reality and he starts the next game and he's pretty much non-existent, and you kind of like, Do you know what? Yes, the guy's got ability. Yes, he's worthwhile having in and around the first team, but sometimes players are better off coming from the bench, and I feel that Success isn't quite ready to be starting Premier League games.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think that's definitely an issue with Success, whether he's more of an impact sub or a starter. I would only say to that is he's proved it against, I know Reading are a lower side and not the same calibre, or Premier League calibre anyway, but then he performed against Spurs where he was man of the match, bullied Davinson Sanchez, bullied the fullbacks and the centre-backs, and he put in a really good shift and scored a goal. So I think those questions about whether he's an impact sub or a starter have been answered, and I really do think he should be given a go. I don't really know what he can do now. He's performed in the Carabao Cup, he's played well in pre-season, and he looks a fitter, sharper eyes of Success than what we saw 2 years ago. So I think definitely put him in for Wolves.
There's an opportunity for him though, isn't it? Because of all the signings you made in the summer, I know you said it, I know Andy said it, that you wanted another striker, which obviously didn't happen, and obviously you can't do anything about that now until January, so this is an opportunity for Isaac's Success, isn't it, that he probably won't get in January, because whether it's January or next summer, you will buy a striker. That's inevitable. Every club will continue to sign players, so this is his opportunity up until then to show he's good enough, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, because at the minute we have Troy Deeney, Andre Gray, Isaac Success,
and that's pretty much it as strikers,
Stefano
isn't it?
Kak, if you really want to
he's not involved. You've got other players like Delafeu and who can do that role. They can play just off your striker. But in terms of actually forwards, there's three who are likely to play. And if one's out of form right now, which you say Gray perhaps is just slightly off it, then this is a huge opportunity for him. And he's been at the club a little while now, and he's shown little bits of of ability and a potential. But it's got to happen sooner rather or later, hasn't it?
There's certainly an argument that you could maybe revert to a 4-3-3. I think we're lacking a real goal scorer up front. We were linked with Paco Alcacer, who's been scoring the goals in for fun at Dortmund, and
that's not going to happen now.
I know. That was
we got linked to Batshuayi as well by a couple of papers. But again, he stayed there. Origi as well.
More career mode signings, if anything. But no, with Alcacer, that was one where I was really annoyed about, because he would be scoring 15-20 goals for us, and could maybe take us on to another level. But that's hindsight. I think you've got Troy Deeney, Gray, Isaac Success. I'm going to forget about Kaka. I think the 4-3-3 would be a preferred system. You can maybe even push Success out to the wing, but then you've got Delafeu, Pereira, so there's a lot of options at the minute, and actually the problem might be is that we've got so much depth, we've got so much ability in the squad at the minute that where do you put all these players, because we can't fit them all in?
That kind of leads on to a question I got as well, saying when Cleverley comes back, what roles he's playing.
I'd forgotten Cleverley existed.
Exactly. He's having some big surgery done. I think it's ankle surgery. It's been a long problem for him over his career. He said he's getting it sorted, then he wants to come back.
Yeah.
He's another leader. He said he's trying to work himself into be a leader, and he definitely was last season. I mean,
so how good was Tom Cleverley? Because he's one of these players now. Unfortunately, he was made a scapegoat, wasn't it, United, and rightly or wrongly. And then he went to Everton and just didn't quite work. Started well and then faded off. And I think people, he was an England international. The guy's got nearly 30 caps for England. Yeah. He's played for Manchester United, played for Everton, but it just feels like his career is massively, fallen down. And now you say he's had a bad injury. I think most people have forgotten about Tom Cleverley.
Yeah, Watford seems to be that club where we get all the rejects. Yeah. Etienne Capoue, Tom Cleverley. There's a few players.
But sometimes you can reinvent yourself and become that player again.
I feel like that's what he's doing, especially when it.
Do you think he's got that capability?
His performances last season, especially at the start, he was played just behind the striker in sort of like a pressing, attacking midfield, and he seemed to just command the team, especially up front, very well. He had a good press. He always puts in 110%, literally, and came up with the winning goal against Arsenal at home last season.
How far away from fitness is he?
I think it's till January.
6 months, okay, probably, so maybe less.
But it's actually 1 year since the Arsenal game, so the Cojones derby anniversary.
We need to forget about that.
Arsenal fans still bringing it up.
A little bit tragic. But no, that was a game which really did highlight Tom Cleverley's qualities, popping up in the last minute, pressed well, led from the front.
Pitch,
exactly. He's actually a player we really miss, because we do have the likes of Abdoulaye Doucouré, Etienne Capoue, Chalobah, but you would argue they're kind of similar players. What you get with Tom Cleverley is a grafter in the midfield. He's someone who can press from the front. He covers probably the most ground alongside Abdoulaye Doucouré. So we do miss him greatly, and that's the issue. When I know it's a long time away and we can't look too far ahead, but when it does get to January and we've got hopefully we have all our players fit, where do you fit Tom Cleverley into the side? I can't really see unless you change the system completely.
unless somebody gets injured. But it's talk about maybe being more fluid with the system. You said you were perhaps frustrated that Javier didn't change it up in the other game. You talk about the options that you've got, and sometimes that means changing the formation, not just the personnel.
A lot of fans have been asking for that as well.
Yeah.
I think now's the time, especially with a game against Wolves, where you might not want to be playing 2 up front and 4 in the midfield.
Exactly.
Wolves very good side at the minute. Play really nice football as well, which they're doing really well, top half of the table. It's going to be very interesting to see if Javi sticks with that 4-4-2. I feel like we're going to get overrun in that midfield again.
I wouldn't mind seeing a 4-3-3 for that. I think Deulofeu should come back in 100%. Chalobah drop into the midfield.
Pereira left wing, and then you play Capu and Decore.
And that looks a really good team on paper. So, yeah, I think maybe if Gracia goes to a 4-3-3, I fancy our chances. But I know we'll touch on Wolves in a bit. But as I said, I'm not confident unless he does do that.
Guys, how can people send more questions in for you?
So our social media is Twitter is at WD18fans, exactly the same for our Instagram.
We're talking Javi Gracia. Started so well this season. A bit of a meh introduction when he first came in last year. Nobody seemed to know too much about him. Didn't really pull up any trees. But he was given the opportunity over the summer, and by all accounts, everyone was happy with what he did. Slightly tailed off a little bit in the last few weeks. Obviously, we've spoke about that and the reasons perhaps why, but it looks like he is going to be set for a new contract. His current one expires, doesn't it, at the end of the season? So, boys, thoughts on this potential new contract? Is it what you want to see happen?
I think I completely agree with a new deal. 3 years. I don't know whether that's been misinterpreted.
It's not very Watfordy, is it?
Yeah, and that's why I'm a little bit cautious about the reports, because I don't know whether they interpret it as another 18 months, which takes him to 3 years at the club, or another 3-year contract. So we'll have to see how that one goes, because if it was a 3-year deal, that'd be completely against the Pozzo system.
But is that not what you want to see?
Yeah, I would like to see maybe a bit more loyalty. But I think where fans have kind of disagreed with this news is maybe wait till Christmas, because it's been going swimmingly in the last few seasons where we start so well. Flores, we started well. Mazzari, we started really well and tailed off, and that was an awful season. Silva, we started incredibly well, top 4 by October. And it's been similar in this respect with under Gracia. But would you give it to him now? I think I do agree with the contract, but would you wait till Christmas? That's probably the argument you could,
or even
make.
Just wait till we win a game. Because I think doing it after a 4-0 loss to Bournemouth might highlight things you don't want highlighted. If you know what I mean. But I totally agree. Like, I'm not going to let the Bournemouth result cloud my judgment. He did a very, very important job last season. We were spiralling downwards. People got annoyed because we sacked Silva because we were 10th in the league or something, but we were like 5 points off relegation, something like that. And he really did help. We got 2 big home wins against Burnley and West Brom.
And Chelsea.
Who could forget that even? That was a great introduction under Gracia. And to be fair, he does know how to win against big teams. This is a guy that went unbeaten against Barcelona when he was at Malaga and kept 2 clean sheets as well against them. So that's very hard to stop a front three of Messi, Suarez and Neymar at that time. But yeah, it's definitely, I'd like to see some stability at the club.
I feel like it's a real big crossroads moment, in the sense that you have changed managers every season, and what was nice and almost a little bit surprising was that you did stick with him during the summer. I think some people thought he perhaps would go. But obviously, as you mentioned, it's this story of a new contract has come out off the back of a 4-0 defeat. Should that matter? Perhaps not. But I would be slightly siding on the air of caution in the sense of looking at your next games and just giving him an opportunity to turn it around, because we've got Wolves up next, which it's going to be a tough game. You're away at Wolves and they're playing really well right now. But then the next 3 are a really, really big 3 games for me. You're at home against Huddersfield, you're away against Newcastle, and then away against Southampton. How much points you're expected to get from them, not sure. But if at the end of those, say if he signs his new contract tomorrow, and at the end of those 4 games, you've picked up 2-3 points, then you're going to be sat here thinking, I'm not sure Javi Gracia is the right man for the job, but you've just given him a 3-year contract, so you've got to stick with him. So, do you know what I'm saying? I personally think, because things have tailed off just a little bit, and you've got a run of games which are kind of winnable, but at the same time, if you lose them, that you're going to start asking questions about the manager. I would just wait until the end of November.
Yeah, I think, these next 4 fixtures, I'd even argue they're season defining. Wolves away will be difficult, as you touched on, Jake, but Huddersfield at home is a must win. I'd argue Newcastle away is a must win, and Southampton away is, I'd say, a must win. So 3 big games in Watford season. I think Wolves away will be difficult because they are a very good side, and I really like their manager, to be fair. But the 3 games afterwards are huge, and then we've got to play Liverpool, your team Leicester. I think we've got Man City and Chelsea over the festive period as well. So there are some big fixtures coming up in Watford season. I think the next 4 are huge. So would you wait? It's a tough one.
But the problem is, you're kind of forced into making a decision as soon as possible, because it's not like when a manager starts well, he's 4 games in, you've won 4 games, hey, look, we like this guy, let's give him a new contract, even though he's still already got 2 years on his contract, so you give him a new and improved one. That isn't the situation here at Watford. Your manager is running out of contract. He is out of contract at the end of the season, so you've got to make a decision, and the longer you leave these things, sometimes the manager could almost take that decision out of their hands, and he'll sit there thinking, oh, they clearly don't back me, they clearly don't have faith in me if they're not gonna sign this contract. So it's a really important 4 games that will define whether you give him a contract, whether you should give him a contract, and whether he wants a contract, and whether you boys want him to get a contract.
So many contracts.
You know what I mean? It's
crazy.
It's a huge thing, because you are forced into making a decision.
No, completely. I think, as I've touched on, there's a massive significance over the next 4 games, not only on the future of Watford and where we can go this season, but also Javi Gracia. He'll be wanting to stay at Watford.
Yeah,
it's a
he'll
club.
want that contract.
Yeah,
I don't think
he'll deserve it.
I don't think he's going to get a better job in the Premier League than Watford in terms of what he's done. And also, looking at Huddersfield, Newcastle, Southampton, 9 points from that is my realistic target, 7 minimum. Like, you cannot get beat by Huddersfield. We got beat Huddersfield at home last season, so that should give us more motivation. Newcastle away last season, we got a good win. Then they just don't seem to show up against us. Southampton away, 2 games last season away at theirs, 1-1, lost 1. It's very up for grabs, and also I'd like to see how he does with the FA Cup and what sort of impetus he puts on that, because we're a mid-table club that should be looking at these sorts of cups to do well in.
I'd say one thing about Gracia is that where you would say give him a contract is, number one, he respects the system. He knows he's not involved in transfers. He can make recommendations. He's fine with it. That was an issue under Silva. He did not like that at all, and his persona got in the way of the contract negotiation, the transfer dealings. It didn't work. Another thing with Gracia is you could tell he's got the fans on board, which has been difficult in years. Flores managed to do it. Silva did at some stage, but it's obviously started to tail off for obvious reasons. Mazzari completely different. Whereas Javi Gracia's galvanised the club. Like since Silva, he came in a really tough period. We could have gone on a massive slump, could have even got relegated. I think if it wasn't for that Chelsea win, I could have probably seen us finishing 18th.
That was our first home game under him as well.
I think you've got to reward the guy with a new contract. 3 years is where I'd probably have an issue. I think go 18 months.
But why? What difference does it make, really? It just means you pay him off more, or you just agree that this is the maximum you're going to get if we sack you?
I'd say it's more for future managers as well, because they know that if they do well for 18 months, they get another 18 months, where if you go 18 months, they get a 3-year deal, then the next manager will want that. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's probably a big issue that the Potsos have to deal with, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Potsos and Scott Duxbury have someone lined up already to replace Gracia. That's just how we work.
Guys, I do want to talk about the international break, because we are still in it, and Watford have had some players involved, like you would fully expect a Premier League club to do so. But I wanted to start with the England angle. You had Nathaniel Chalobah in the squad.
Always good to see.
Which is good. But there was no Will Hughes, and in my personal opinion, you've got Chalobah, who's coming back from injury, and he's been out for quite a while, and he's never really had a full proper season in the Premier League. He's always been a player of huge potential. I think Will Hughes has been playing brilliantly, and I just felt like, whilst Chalobah is a good footballer, I've got no real issue with him being in there. But if Will Hughes isn't going to get in now, he's never going to get in, surely. Were you surprised to see Chalobah and not Hughes, or just frankly Chalobah in there?
Very, very surprised is an understatement. I mean, Chalobah, how Chalobah was in there, I'm not too sure. Obviously worked with Southgate in the under-21s, rates him highly.
He's clearly a player he knows and he likes, but surely he'll know Will Hughes as well.
Yeah, that's what I think as well, because Will Hughes has got a stunning career with the under-21s alongside
he was in the under-21s for like 20 years. He was, wasn't he? He's one of those players for forever.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that did go against Will Hughes, and you touched on him playing really well, Jake, but he was in at right mid, and it's not in his favoured position.
No.
And Southgate might look at that and go, until he plays in that attacking midfield position, then I can't rate him. Whereas if he's playing on the right, he's then comparing Will Hughes with Sancho, Rashford.
Yeah, well, they play more with wingers, don't they, as opposed to a right midfielder. But you look at the midfield options that England have got. We've kind of got holding defensive midfielders, don't we? We've got that area covered. I mean, Jordan Henderson is going to start. He's your main man, and then you've got Eric Dyer.
Team sheet.
Well, it is. I mean, you've got those players there. So I don't really understand the point in bringing in Chalobah in the nicest way possible. He's just not going to play unless there's a number of injuries. We want a more progressive, more attacking-minded, creative central midfield player, then surely Will Hughes is more suitable for that.
Especially when players like James Maddison are being given a run out in the squad. I think he's been brilliant at Leicester, but I definitely think then if you're bringing him, definitely have a look at Will Hughes, see what they're doing, them two in training together, even just training with the team. I think it's going to improve Maddison a lot, it's going to improve Hughes a lot, and I think that's why they've kind of had Chalobah with them, obviously, over the last year during his injury. He was actually training with England before the World Cup, even though he's not in the squad.
I think Chalobah would have been in the World Cup squad if he was...
Do you think?
Yeah, I really do think that, because...
Southgate does have a soft spot for him,
I was going to say, I get the impression it's a bit of a teacher's pet vibe coming with Southgate and Chalobah, because... I mean, the guy hasn't played football for over...
So what, perhaps in the squad ahead of Fabian Delph? I'm just trying to think of where...
Fabian Delph.
Yeah, well, obviously Fabian Delph was in there, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chalobah will be integral in the England squad at some stage, and it's clear if Southgate stays as manager, it will only be beneficial for Chalobah, because he knows he's one of the first names on the team sheet by the sounds of it.
What's he been like since he come back from injury?
Well, I mean, he played in the Carabao Cup, so he played against Reading, Tottenham, but because Etienne Capoue and Abdoulaye Coré hasn't played that well this season, but Etienne Capoue has played fantastically well, and you're not really going to drop Coré because of that 5-year contract. The big man, like, he's one of the best players at the club. But Chalobah in the Carabao Cup games anyway, it's good to get his fitness up. I thought Reading, he kept the ball well, especially against Tottenham. I know it was their B team, but he did play really well and look fit again. It's just whether you chuck him in the deep end just yet. I know he actually is a really good thing about Chalobah. I went to an under-23 game on the Monday, and Chalobah actually he asked if he could play in it to get his fitness up. So there's clearly a real desire to get back into the team. There's a real desire to get fit again. So I'm hoping to see him maybe in the next couple of months. But if Capoue and Doucouré play as badly as they did against Bournemouth, then it won't be long till he's back in the side.
Had a tweet in regarding Javi, and boys, if you've got any, flag them up. This one's from Will. He says, I would wait until the end of the season. He'd wait until that long before giving Javi a new contract. We don't know how the rest of the season will turn out, so let's not rush into things and give him a 3-year contract. Now, do you not feel that's too long?
It's an interesting one. If you leave it till potentially his contract is up, it's interesting because there's so much to happen in the rest of the season, and I kind of agree with your point earlier in terms of if you leave it longer and longer and the performances aren't getting better,
but it brings us to the players.
Sat there going,
it's the players as well. The players, the players need to know who's boss, don't they? So if the players, if things aren't going well, they're going to start looking at each other thinking, well, this guy might not even be here in a couple of weeks.
It's very similar to Matt Zari. Obviously, Deeney was talking about him a few weeks ago when Deeney was saying, you come on from the bench, playing really well, boss might start the next game, no, you're on the bench. He just didn't want to put Deeney on. It's like, if you need to get on with your players, which I think Garcia does really well, definitely, which he is doing. And so, therefore, I think you've got to look at it, giving him this deal, whether it's 3 years or not, different. I think just give him a deal, because then it just settles everyone.
Yeah.
I think the players need a season where they're going, right, we've had one pre-season with the same manager, and we're going to end with the same manager. It's that sort of thing that kind of just extra motivation for him. They know the club know what's going on, and it's not uncertainty again.
I mean, you saw it under Marco Silva, how morale dropped when there was talk behind the scenes.
Yeah. If it does have an effect.
Exactly, and if this happens with Gracia, then I think it could be a similar impact. I don't think Gracia is the same sort of person and manager to do that, because I think Silva had a huge ego. We've seen it at Everton already. The guy is pretty stuck up, and he's got a big persona.
Yeah.
I think Gracia has a persona, but he does it in a more quiet manner. He's very understated, and I think the thing with Gracia is he won't kick up a fuss. He'll keep it low key. So I think if you give him a deal, it would be beneficial, and it would be the right thing to do. How long, I don't really care, but I think it would be a short term deal, because that's just how we operate.
Yeah, no, I think it would be a gamble, but I think it's a gamble you've got to make, because I think eventually it will start to have an effect on the players. So, for instance, if the players aren't 100% sure if this guy's going to be here or not, they hear rumours of contract talks happening but never actually coming to fruition, then nobody goes out onto the football pitch and not to try. But if you're not in the team and you think, oh, the manager's going to be going, you're not going to bust a gut to get back into it subconsciously. You know, say nobody does it on purpose, but do you know what I mean? I feel that the longer these kind of things drag out, then it will have an effect actually on the pitch itself.
It's also when it comes to the team with Gracia, it's like they seem to be operating really well, but obviously with the same formation now at the moment, it does seem to be getting a bit stagnated. And if he didn't change the starting 11 for the first 6 games of the season until he needed to, what does that say to the subs? What does that say to those people trying to push in? We bought Massina in the summer, new left back, to replace Holebas. I thought he'd give Massina a first start of the season in the first game of the season, because I thought that's what he was going to do. But then he goes Holebas. Holebas played really well up until now. He's got so many bookings, he's got suspended. But
I think one thing with Gracia, and then it's with morale as well, is the fact that because he kind of steadied the ship when he came in. Start of the season, played really well. What message does that send if you don't back the manager? He'll then start to think, well, right, if they're not going to give me a contract at our best. Well, the best period with me at the helm, then what is he going to be thinking? Oh, I'm going to be looking for my next job. He's not going to have his heart really in the job. I think that's one thing you've got to be thinking about, whether Gracia is going to kind of drop his attitude. His attitude's going to get in the way. But I don't think he's that kind of manager. But I think you've got to do it as a statement of intent and show that you are backing Gracia till the end of the season.
We're getting some calls in. Shane is on the phone now. Shane, thank you for calling in. The boys have told me it was your birthday yesterday, so we'll start with a happy birthday for you.
Thank
boys,
you, mate.
Happy
birthday, Shane.
Shane. Shane, what do you want to say, mate?
First of all, instead of not having any club football the weekend.
It's rubbish, isn't it?
Had a nice birthday though. Yeah.
Did not head down to your local non-league club and support them? It was non-league day. No. Didn't fancy it.
Had a few birthday plans in fairness, but no. Listen, in regards to Javi, I think 3 years. I don't know where that's come from. Really, I think that's a bit. I think kind of weird. I think, all right, had you said that maybe end of August, I would have agreed, possibly. But it's what's worrying me at the moment, I guess, is the slump that we're currently in, and it's almost a case of whether or not we're going to come out of that slump. Now, if we do, great. I think 3 years is too much. However, I would give him a year. I'd give him next season, definitely. I guess it kind of stems from the need for stability at the club, a manager that can just take us through a number of seasons. But Harry has worried me in the last couple of weeks or so. You know, not changing things up. Just things seem to be slipping a little bit. You know, by all means, I love him. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to say, what does your gut tell you about Javi? Do you think he'll turn it around? Do you think he's the guy to go forward, or do you still have some lingering doubts at the back of your mind?
I'll be honest, the lads in the studio will know, obviously, being part of the fan channel, I wasn't very keen on him signing a new contract. Like back end of last season, there were still a few doubts, but we've had an electric start to the season, and I guess in a way, whilst I was uncertain, I kind of put my doubts to one side. You know, you get behind the lads, you get behind the manager and all that, but the last couple of weeks, especially last Saturday against Bournemouth, I mean, we were atrocious. I mean, not bringing on a centre-back when we were down to 10 men, not bringing Maps off the bench, you kind of got to question him, and you kind of got to ask the question of, well, what are you kind of playing at? Because we were getting absolutely slaughtered. I'm putting Etienne Caputo at centre back. It's just suicidal. I mean, in my gut tells me that he will turn it around. I've got a lot of faith in Javi. He seems really committed to the club. The club seems to have a lot of faith in him. The players are really responding to him as well. You guys talk about Chalabar and the whole Gareth Southgate kind of thing. I think he's found a real home with Watford, and I think he's really nurtured himself into a fantastic player. It's a shame because of injury, and I think as I think Jacob alluded to earlier, I think he was absolutely spot on. He would have been in the World Cup squad had he not been injured. Southgate has such a good spot, has such a sweet spot for him, but he's been unlucky with injuries, etc. But my gut does tell me that I think Javi will definitely turn it around.
Shane, you touched on the electric start to the season that we've made. You also touched on that Bournemouth horror show. Do you think fans are overreacting from last week's defeat? I know it's a 4-0 defeat at Vicarage Road, and at home you wouldn't expect that, but we've got some big games coming up. Do you think that that result could really affect our next 4 games?
I think it could do. I think he genuinely could. I mean, I said it last week to you guys. I thought there was no fight in that team, and all of a sudden things seem to change. I think the fact that it happened to Bournemouth as well, for Watford fans, just kind of touched a few nerves. Do I think it was an overreaction? Possibly, but I guess the big test of whether or not it was an overreaction is going to come within our next couple of matches, I think. And it's a real possibility as well. We all saw what happened when we played Huddersfield last season. If they turn up at the Vic in similar kind of form, the alarm bells will start ringing. I think Wolves will be a very tough game for us. I think we'll be going up against quality. I think Wolves have got more quality than we have. If I'm being positive, I think we'll try and play for a draw. But in regards to the fans, as to whether or not they're overreacting, I guess time will tell, really. I think there were definite signs, though, of just a lack of discipline, I guess. I mean, defensively, we were terrible last week. I mean, Cathcart, Cabasele were both so solid for us start of the season. Cabasele just went to his head, and as someone actually pointed out to me after the game, it wasn't the first time he'd kind of slid in and lost his head. He did it at the Arsenal game at the Emirates and the Carabao Cup game against Spurs. Just a little bit of ill discipline creeping in.
And there, Shane, talking about, obviously, we've got to make defensive changes for Wolves this weekend.
Absolutely.
You said we're probably going to go for a draw there. I'm not confident about Wolves away. I think it's not our performance as such, it's just respect for Wolves at the moment and what they're doing. Huddersfield, Newcastle and Southampton, I'm saying if we don't get 2 wins from that, but when you're looking at those 3 games, Huddersfield, Newcastle, Southampton, this is the chance to A, cure the slump, and B, bounce forward and move up the table again. Final question for you is what are you seeing from those 3 games? How many points you seeing, etc.?
I think we'll beat Huddersfield. I will be very, very concerned if we don't beat Huddersfield. Given their start of the season and given that they're probably favourites to go down this season, I'll be very concerned with that. Newcastle and Southampton, I think, I've heard a lot of fans say, they're easy sides to play. Newcastle and Southampton have struggled at the start of this season. They'll be looking at their home games to kind of turn things around. And whilst we did very well against Newcastle last season, you can never bet against Rafa turning up. He turned up for 45 minutes last Saturday, for example, and they very nearly, had they not bottled it, got themselves a win against United. So, and Southampton, I think we'll get a result there as well. But I've always said this about Watford. It's just so typical Watford in certain seasons. We've gone off and lost 4-0 to Bournemouth. We could go off and beat Wolves 2-0 next week. We just don't know. But if you ask me for a prediction, I think we'll probably get 7 points from from those 3. I reckon we'll beat Huddersfield, we'll beat Southampton. I can see us dropping points against Newcastle.
I'd take 7 points. Would you, Jacob?
Yeah, 100%. I think you've definitely got to be targeting a few points out of the next 4.
All right, super stuff. Yeah. Shane, thanks for the call, mate. Hope you enjoyed the birthday celebrations, and you're back at Premier League football next weekend, mate. The international break is over. So, boys, let's look at those fixtures. Let's get your opinions on them. It's a dangerous game, I think, putting yourself out there saying, we want this many points, we need this many points, because ultimately you just don't know, do you?
Just compares to the rest of the table and what everyone else is doing.
I mean, You're looking at it, and naturally you're going to say, we want to win that Huddersfield game. But it's just kind of not the way it goes, is it? And it goes without saying, you don't want to lose all 4 of them. But yeah, I wouldn't be looking at fixtures saying, we need something from that one, we need something from that one, because it just happens, doesn't it?
I'd rather say that now, though, than 5 games until the end of the season when we're fighting for relegation because we've had a poor season and changed manager again or something like that. Also, Huddersfield took 6 points from us last season. For me, that hurts a team like Huddersfield. We should be, on paper, at least getting points from them, like basic requirements. But yeah, I think apart from that Bournemouth game, we do look much stronger at home than away in general in the Premier League. So out of those 4 games, the 1 home game at home to Huddersfield, that needs, in my opinion, that does need to be a win, especially with Wolves this coming weekend coming up.
David Connolly, former Football League striker, played for a whole host of clubs, including my team, Leicester City, Wimbledon, Wigan. He's brilliant pundit is David Connolly. He was on the show earlier on today, and he had this to say about you boys.
They've lost Richarlison, which is a blow, but obviously they got top money for him. They have retained the likes of Capoue and Doucouré, who are 2, I think, really good central midfielders. I'm huge fans of theirs. I think it's just at the centre half where they have had injuries, like Cathcart, for example. They've never quite had a settled back four, which I think has been a real issue for them. But they're ninth. They've got 13 points. Grazia, I think, has got a nice way of playing with a sort of four and then a very narrow midfield, and he gets his fullbacks to go high. And they'll be fine. They'll be fine. And it looks like they might have found the right man finally to be in charge.
Yeah, hopefully.
So there you are. You've got the Gracia's got the backing of David Connolly. Think he's the right man for it. No settled defence, is that fair?
I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
I think, I do agree with that. I think you look at the full-backs, and we've always had a whole host of quality in those positions, the right-back and left-back particularly. But I'd say outside the top six, two of the strongest in the league. But the centre-back has always been an issue. We've been chopping and changing with injuries. You can't really help that. But the likes of Kabasele's probably the main defender. But Cathcart, if last week's anything to go, I was going to say yesterday, last week's anything to go by, then, yeah, that was awful. But we've got Mariappa, we've got a young man called Wilmot coming through as well. So there is quality, but as David said, there's not a main back four, and there's not a back four where you go, you know what, week in, week out, this is the back four we want to play, and that will play. It just never works like that with Watford.
I mean, as well, Ziegler and Britos, two players that are recently either coming back from injury or working their way back into the side.
I forgot about Ziegler.
Did you hear about it?
Yeah,
No.
so basically, under 23 game against Millwall under 23, I think it was on Friday. Watford Twitter's like, yeah, they're both in the team, they're both starting, come on, they're back to full fitness.
Yeah.
Britos gives away a penalty, and Ziegler gets sent off for like punching one of them in the face or something like that. It was an absolute
Welcome
horror
back.
show. Yeah, and
He won't be playing for the club anytime soon.
Ziegler, no, and I think Javi and the board have done correct in bringing in Adam Massina from Serie B.
Bologna.
Yeah, he was Player of the Year last year in Serie B. A lot of previous winners of them have gone on to do big things. I think Insigne one of them as well. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting back four we could choose from, especially right back. Femenia, I thought defensively was awful last week. I can see why Grizzly has been wanting to put him at right mid ahead of Janmat at right back. But yeah, we got Mark Navarro. It's weird. We do have options, but we need like a big standout, maybe a marquee signing in January sort of defender.
So let's look at Wolves up next. It's, on paper, I think, as a neutral, it's going to be an entertaining game. Two teams that like to play, a particular, not going to sit in, basically. It should be a good game of football. But how do you see this one going? Are you slightly wary or nervous of losing this one?
I hope it's not an exciting game. I think that's where we could be a little bit of trouble, because Wolves are a brilliant side. I mean, to come up and put that much money. Really started.
I think they initially they looked a bit naive but good, but now they seem to have been learning really quickly.
Yeah, they've got some real marquee signings in there. But yeah, I think Gracia will know that Wolves are the favourites going into it. We're going to have to set up compactly. We can't let the players go in behind, because they've got a whole host of pace up front. But yeah, I think I'd definitely take a point, 100%, and maybe even nick one on the break. That'd be brilliant.
Just very quickly then, score predictions from both before we head off.
Positive 2-2.
Yeah,
I was literally going to say a draw, yeah. High scoring draw, 2-2. 3-3, I'll say then.
Love yourself. Boys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Those were the opinions of the boys from the WD18 fan channel. Nearly messed it up. Jacob and Robin, thanks for your time.
Cheers, man.
Wolves, going to be a tough one, but we'll find out next week how you got on.